Hello everyone, welcome to the CTV News on Calabash TV and on the Wave Radio 94.5. I am Lisa Joseph. The inaugural meeting of trade ministers from the OECS took place here on Monday. The meeting served as a forum for ministers to discuss matters regarding trade policy and related issues. The trade ministers from Antigua, Barbuda, Dominica, Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Kitts Nevis, Montserrat, Anguilla and the British Virgin Islands discussed advancing the OECS priorities in the World Trade Organization, the WTO, as well as progress towards the establishment of the free circulation of goods regime. Nicole Garraway is the Senior Program Officer in the Trade Policy Unit at the OECS Commission.
Instruments such as the revised Treaty of Bastille, which seeks to establish the OECS Economic Union, essentially provides the framework through which regimes like free circulation and so on are established. So we have the framework, we know what needs to be done. There needs to be harmonization of trade policies, we need harmonization of commercial policies. We also need to look at things such as mercantile law, how exactly OECS member states treat with certain practical aspects that of course the revised treaty as a legislative instrument does not delve deeply into. So while the revised Treaty of Bastille, which establishes the OECS Economic Union, doesn't get into the nitty-gritty, so to speak, but it provides that overarching framework, forums such as this would serve really for ministers who are essentially custodians of policies to draft, to discuss, to deliberate, to really get down to matters that would really affect their member states. And of course, these ministers are guided by the advice of their senior technical officers. We do have some senior officers with us as well here today. So it's really just to discuss at this senior level, how exactly do we get the treaty as a living instrument? How exactly do we implement the treaty? How do we move from a law, basically an international agreement, to the treaty in action?
The ministers also discussed coordinated strategies that can be adopted to better position the sub-region to trade with countries and groups of countries, as well as prepare for the 10th WTO Ministerial Conference to be held in Kenya, December 15 to the 18th. Upcoming negotiations with Canada were thrashed out, along with relations in the wider CARICOM grouping. Patrick Antoine is Grenada's ambassador to the OECS, CARICOM and the WTO.
Such as what we do in making sure that there is in fact no prejudice brought to our participation in Canada, in CARICOM, from having the OECS Economic Union. So it has to be an open sort of framework. The third thing is what we do on the economic union pillars, and one of them, as you've mentioned, is the free circulation. Another one is what we do in terms of goods, how we deal with the exchange of goods amongst ourselves by creating a common development space, and how we put measures in place that will give us the kind of buffer we need against competition from countries such as Trinidad, where the energy amounts, the energy levels from Trinidad and Tobago, for instance, are 12 times cheaper than in the OECS. So those are important discussions that we have to have here.
The Council of Ministers is one of the 5 principal organs of the OECS established under Article 7 of the revised Treaty of Bastille, which establishes the OECS Economic Union. As such, the ministers reviewed the regime guiding the free circulation of goods from a third-party state.
From Canada, the United States, that once it enters the OECS Economic Union space once, it can circulate freely in any of the 6 what we call protocol members of the OECS Economic Union. That's very important because that has implications, for instance, for what we do on the revenue side. If the good comes into St. Lucia and it's free to circulate to Grenada, the question becomes the revenue I would have gotten through Grenada that now comes through St. Lucia, how do I share in that? So that brings into play what we call revenue sharing. Then there's another important aspect of that free circulation arrangement that is key. Since it's behind this common OECS border, it's not just goods that we're trading that's inanimate, that don't carry anything. You know, Ebola, there are all kinds of things now crossing borders. So the issue becomes, how do we put an institutional framework in place to deal with these threats to plant health. And this brings into play our SPS, sanitary and phytosanitary measures. We want to have a common regime of sanitary and phytosanitary measures so that if it enters in St. Lucia or St. Vincent or Antigua or Grenada, it's the same regime that's been instituted, since once it enters, it can circulate freely. And of course, the same thing goes for standards, technical barriers to trade. How do we know, for instance, that when a chair that comes into St. Lucia that is built to carry someone with a maximum weight of 90 pounds, when that chair comes into Grenada, which can circulate freely, if there is no standard in place that's common, and it comes into Grenada and it finds its way into St. Lucia, it could in fact harm someone. Something as simple as that, and I've seen this happen in the OECS,